Stop right there, beloved one. Whatever you were carrying a moment ago, let it lower for just this span, because what is moving toward you is not random, and it is not for the crowd. It is for you. You have been carrying a quiet ache that almost nobody around you can name. You keep showing up, you keep holding yourself together, you keep giving what you have, and still there is this private sense that something inside you has been waiting for permission to breathe. Tonight I am not coming to entertain you. I am coming to tell you why this has been happening, what the signs around you actually mean, what the hidden pattern beneath them has been doing, and what must return in you before this closes. By the time we finish, you will recognize the signs that have been circling your days and nights. You will understand the one pattern that has been tightening around your steps, and you will hear a declaration spoken over you that your spirit has been waiting to receive. You did not arrive here by accident. You were brought here by appointment, because there are moments when heaven does not shout from far away. It comes close, it names what you have lived through, and it does so with exactness that leaves no room for dismissal. So stay with me until the last word lands, because what I'm about to say will not only explain the ache, it will show you that the ache has been speaking in its own language for longer than you realized. Something has been happening to you, and you have felt it even when you could not explain it. You have sensed the shift before you had language for it, and that is why certain days have felt heavier, quieter, and strangely more honest than before. You may have noticed that you wake at the same hour again and again, as if an unseen hand keeps touching the window of your sleep. You may have noticed that your body stirs before dawn, not with fear exactly, but with the sense that something is asking to be noticed. You may have found yourself sitting in rooms you once filled with ease, and suddenly feeling like a visitor in your own life. The conversations that used to carry you now feel thin, and the phrases that once satisfied you now sound like they were borrowed from someone else. You may have looked at familiar people and felt no anger, only distance, not because you are hard, not because you are failing, but because your spirit is attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise, learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. No longer pretending that what once fed you is still enough for where you are going. And then there are the little signs that keep crossing your path. Repeated numbers, repeated phrases, a verse, a name, a sentence, the same theme arriving in different places until you can no longer pretend it is coincidence. You are not imagining that repetition. Something is trying to get your attention. What all of this means is not that you are broken. What all of this means is not that you are losing yourself. It means your inner life is refusing to stay asleep while your outer life continues as usual. It means calibration is happening where you thought only confusion lived. It means invitation is happening where you thought only interruption lived. It means alignment is happening where you thought only exhaustion lived. And yes, even the exhaustion has a message. Sometimes the tiredness is not the evidence of failure. Sometimes it is the evidence that what is false in your life can no longer be carried without strain. Take a breath with me. Let that settle into the place in you that has been trying to stay sensible while your spirit has been trying to speak. If even one of those moments just landed in you, if your chest tightened, if your shoulders dropped, if you recognized yourself in the waking hour, type the number 888 in the comments. 888 is the sign of overflow, the reminder that what is coming toward you is not scarcity but expansion. Type 888, then come right back to me. Because beneath these signs there is something deeper. Beneath the waking hour, beneath the distance, beneath the repeated patterns that keep brushing your life, there is one single pattern that has been running quietly in the background. The pattern is this: you have been trying to carry a season that is already ending with the strength that belonged to the season before it. You have been using old muscles for a new doorway. You have been treating transition like a task list, when in truth it is a surrender. That is why effort has felt strangely expensive. That is why the same strategies no longer open the same doors. That is why what once worked now leaves you empty, even when it still looks impressive from the outside. You have been mistaking endurance for direction. You have been mistaking strain for faithfulness. You have been pulling on ropes that were never attached to the future you are meant to enter. And because you are capable, because you are loyal, because you are used to being the one who keeps things together, you kept trying harder in the very place where heaven was asking you to loosen your grip. This is not a rebuke. This is recognition. You did not invent this pattern because you are foolish. You inherited it, adapted to it, and survived through it. You learned how to stay useful when you should have been allowed to rest. You learned how to remain composed when you should have been allowed to be held. That is why the pattern has been so quiet. It did not announce itself as an enemy. It dressed itself as responsibility. It sounded noble. It sounded mature. It sounded like the very thing that made you dependable. But it has been costing you more than you were meant to pay. It has been asking your peace to fund your performance. It has been asking your softness to sponsor your survival. It has been asking your soul to keep paying attention to what is already gone. And there is the ache beneath the ache. You know when something is over, but part of you keeps acting as if enough effort could resurrect it. You know when a door has closed, but your hand keeps reaching for the handle because letting go feels like admitting the old way mattered. Stay here, because the layer beneath this is deeper still. What I'm about to name will sound like a metaphor at first, but it is more exact than you think. I see you as a tree in winter, not a dead tree, not a failed tree, a tree that has gone still because the ground has changed, the air has changed, and the work is happening where no eye applauds it. The branches look quiet, but beneath the soil, the root system is moving with a wisdom the branches do not have to manufacture. That is you right now. The tree does not have to force spring. The tree does not have to argue with winter. The tree does not have to pretend that bare branches are a moral failure. It remains rooted, and in remaining rooted, it becomes ready for what the season itself is preparing. But imagine that long before this winter, something happened to the tree. Imagine that in an earlier season, it was bent toward the wind so often that it learned to call tension normal. Imagine that its roots were trained to reach where there was no water, because at some point survival required adaptation, not ease. That is how the pattern began. Not in this moment, long ago. A tree can grow around damage. A tree can keep standing after a storm. A tree can even keep bearing fruit while carrying an old fracture beneath the bark. But what is bent early often becomes ordinary later, and what became ordinary later was never meant to define the whole of the tree. Somewhere along the line, your root system learned to expect drought, even when water was near. Somewhere along the line, your branches learned to hold themselves up because no one taught the trunk how to be gently supported. Somewhere along the line, your growth began to look like compensation, and you called that strength. You called that maturity. You called that the way things are. But the tree remembers. Even when the trunk is quiet, the roots remember. Even when the leaves are still, the roots remember. Even when you have been trained to look unbothered, the roots remember what was never fully healed. There was a voice in you once that was alive without apology. There was a natural reaching in you once that did not need to be earned. There was a kind of inner weather in you once that did not fear its own movement. But over time, the tree learned to stay very still to be safe. The tree learned that certain winds came with cost. The tree learned that certain seasons rewarded compliance, not truth. So it dimmed its own signal. It tightened around itself. It became good at surviving what should never have been normalized. And this is why you sometimes feel like your life is deep but narrow, rich but restrained, full of knowing yet reluctant to spread. The tree is alive, yes, but part of it has been holding its breath for years. I am saying this carefully because I want you to hear the tenderness in it. The dimming was not your destiny. It was adaptation. It was the response of something holy trying to remain intact. And now, even now, the roots are stirring again. You may have noticed that some old fears no longer fit you, even if they still visit. You may have noticed that certain forms of approval do not satisfy you the way they used to. You may have noticed that what once intimidated you now looks smaller than it did before. That is not accident. That is the tree remembering its own shape. Let that image stay with you. The roots are not asking permission to exist. They are moving toward water. If the image of that tree just landed in you, if you can feel the winter and the roots and the quiet turning under the soil, type the words, "I am home," in the comments. Let that be your recognition of what is returning. Type it, then come right back to me. Because the tree is not being asked to become something else. It is being invited to return to what was always true, beneath the damage, beneath the adaptation, beneath the long habit of holding itself together too tightly. And that is the return waiting for you now. You do not need to become louder to be real. You do not need to become harder to be protected. You do not need to become more impressive to be seen. What you need is to come back into agreement with the life that is already trying to rise in you. That return is not a project. It is a remembering. You are not being asked to build a self from scratch. You are being asked to let go of the self that was assembled under pressure. You are not being asked to prove your worth. You are being asked to receive the worth that was never actually lost. This is where the shift becomes simple, though not always easy. You stop feeding every old rope. You stop negotiating with every dead weight. You stop calling every familiar burden your identity. You begin to tend what is alive. You begin to honor what is true. You begin to keep company with the places in you that still know how to grow. There are two gentle practices that belong to this return, and neither of them is a performance. The first is what I call the morning seal. Before you take in the day, before the noise enters, you place one hand over your chest and say quietly, "I receive what is mine and release what is not." The second is what I call the frequency audit. At the end of the day, you ask yourself one honest question: what in me felt expansive, and what in me felt like a contract I never agreed to sign? You do not judge the answer, you simply listen. These are not tasks to master. They are ways of tending the root system. They are ways of telling your inner life that it no longer has to survive on reflex alone. And when you do this, something very old begins to loosen. Not in a dramatic way, not in a theatrical way. In the quiet way a branch turns toward the sun after a long season of grey. You will still have moments of uncertainty. Of course you will. But the uncertainty will no longer be the master of the house. It will become a passing weather, not a permanent climate. You will still meet reminders of the old pattern. Of course you will. But they will no longer have the authority to define your direction. The tree does not need to argue with the storm to know spring exists. It only needs to remain open to what is already rising beneath the bark. And you, beloved one, are more open than you realize. You are more ready than you think. You are more held than you feel. You are more alive than the old pattern wants to admit. If something in this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words, not as a metric, as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Sit with that for a moment. Let the recognition settle into the part of you that has been waiting longest to be acknowledged. There is someone in your life who just came to mind while I was speaking. Someone quietly tired, someone carrying more than they show, someone who has learned how to look composed while their inner life asks for mercy, someone who has been faithful in a hidden way no one else fully sees. Maybe it is the one who keeps giving even after being overlooked. Maybe it is the one who has been standing at the edge of a new beginning without telling anyone how afraid they are. Maybe it is the one whose face just rose before you because their hunger and their tenderness have made room for this message. Send this to them, not as advice, not as content, as a delivery the same way it was delivered to you tonight, by appointment. What you are passing on is not a recommendation. It is recognition. It is a hand placed gently on the shoulder of someone who needs to know they are not the only one standing in winter. And now, before this closes, I need you to hear the seal forming over everything that has been spoken here. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not failing. You are being gathered into truth. You are being steadied where you were strained. You are being restored where you were dimmed. You are being called back to your own root system, back to the place in you that knows how to receive without fear. You are confirmed. You are commissioned. You are carried. You are not a mistake in motion. You are not a burden in disguise. You are a life being brought back into alignment. Right now, all across the world, there are hearts hearing this same recognition and feeling something in them settle into place. They are not louder because of it. They are truer because of it. And what is true does not need to announce itself to be real. You are part of that quiet company. You are part of that hidden mercy. You are part of what is being restored in silence. I am chosen. Breathe once more, and let that confession stand where it has been placed. Let it stand over your memory, over your waiting, over your winter, over the parts of you that were never meant to remain dim. You are chosen. You are seen. You are being led back to what is yours. It is sealed. You are not being asked to start over. You are being asked to remain. What opened in you just now is not a passing feeling, and you do not need to rush past it to prove that you are strong. There are moments when the soul recognizes its own address, and this is one of them. You felt the weight of the words because they touched what has been waiting in you for a long time. Do not call that weakness. Do not call that sentiment. It is recognition. There is a way a person learns to live with the door half closed. They become skilled at moving carefully, speaking quietly, asking little of anyone, and expecting even less from the future. They are not bitter. They are not careless. They are simply tired of hoping in places where hope kept returning without a name. That is why this message reached you the way it did. Not to flatter you, not to entertain the outer edge of you. It reached you because the place that has been listening in secret is ready for a fuller sentence. And the sentence is this: what has been happening in you is bigger than disappointment, deeper than fatigue, and more faithful than the fear that has shadowed it. You have been standing at the edge of an inward crossing, and even if no one around you saw it, you felt it. You felt the old definitions no longer fit. You felt the quiet grief of outgrowing what once held you. You felt the strange, sacred pressure of not being able to pretend anymore. That is not confusion. That is becoming. You have been trying to translate a new season using an old vocabulary, and the effort has been costly. It has made simple things feel heavy. It has made ordinary days feel charged. It has made your body more honest than your mouth. You sense the shift first in the private places where performance cannot survive. You notice that some approvals no longer move you. You notice that some invitations no longer quicken you. You notice that some voices, once powerful, now sound distant, as if they belong to a room you have already left behind. That distance is not punishment. It is calibration. When a door opens inward, the room changes before the hallway does. You feel it before you can explain it. You sense that certain obligations have lost their authority, even when your habits still try to obey them. You are not becoming less loyal to life. You are becoming more truthful to it. And that truth often arrives first as discomfort. It may have come through waking at the same hour again and again. It may have come through a dream that lingered after sunrise with unusual clarity. It may have come through a repeated phrase, a repeated number, a repeated feeling that some detail in your day was looking back at you. You are not inventing that pattern to make meaning where none exists. Something is making its way toward you through repetition because your hearing is finally quiet enough to notice. This is why the signs matter. Not because they are magical decorations, because they are confirmations. They tell you that your inner life is no longer asleep. They tell you that the old arrangement has loosened. They tell you that what once felt buried is beginning to breathe. Even the weariness has become informative. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes from labor, and there is a kind of exhaustion that comes from resisting your own truth. You know the difference in your bones. One leaves you spent. The other leaves you unsettled, as if your own life is trying to call you by a name you have not yet answered. Let that settle. If even one of those details has landed in you, if some part of you has been nodding in silence as you listen, type the number 888 in the comments. Not because a number can save you, because your fingers typing it are your way of saying yes to what has already been named. 888 is the frequency of overflow. Type 888, then come back to me. Because beneath those signs there is a pattern, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You have been carrying what is ending with the posture of what is beginning. You have been taking a closing chapter and trying to force it to behave like a promise. You have been pushing into a future that will not respond to the same pressure that once got you through the past. That is the hidden pattern, not weakness, not failure, misalignment. You have been trying to keep one foot in the room that is leaving and one hand on the door that is opening. And the strain of that split has been speaking through your body, your attention, your rest, your relationships, your silence. It has shown up as heaviness where there should have been ease, as urgency where there should have been peace, as effort where there should have been flow. You have mistaken strain for virtue because strain was familiar. You have mistaken overextension for devotion because overextension was rewarded. You have mistaken self-abandonment for endurance because nobody taught you another way. But you are not here to keep proving you can survive what is no longer yours to carry. You have done that already. You have done that long enough. You have done that faithfully, and it has cost you more than anyone knows. The pattern has a voice, and it sounds noble at first. It says, keep going, keep holding, keep adjusting, keep making it work, keep being the one, keep taking the next burden, because perhaps this time the burden will become a blessing if you hold it correctly. But some burdens are only burdens, some doors are only doors, some seasons are only asking for your release, not your heroism. The cost of staying inside the pattern is subtle at first. You become excellent at functioning while quietly thinning from the inside. You become dependable while privately depleted. You become the one others count on while you lose count of how often you have ignored your own need for gentleness. And because you have been capable, people have assumed you were fine. Because you have been clear, people have assumed you were unshaken. Because you have been steady, people have assumed you were untouched. They did not see the invisible negotiation happening in you. They did not see how often you translated discomfort into composure. They did not see how often you translated grief into patience. They did not see how often you translated fear into usefulness. So hear this carefully. You were not wrong for surviving that way. You were adapting. You were staying alive inside conditions that asked too much. But what kept you standing is not necessarily what will carry you forward. And that is why the deeper layer matters. Under the pattern, under the strain, under the old habit of overholding, there is a root level that was shaped long ago. I do not speak of blame. I speak of formation. Something in you learned early that it was safer to remain tense than to remain true. You are like a tree that learned winter too young. The tree did not choose the season, but it learned the season. It learned how to harden its bark before it had learned how to trust the spring. It learned how to send its roots farther underground because the light above was not always kind. It learned to survive by becoming less expressive on the outside than it was on the inside. That tree is still alive. That tree is still standing. That tree is still holding a memory of water. But it was taught in an older time to expect less than abundance. It was taught to bend before it was taught to bloom. It was taught to make do when it should have been nourished. And so, what looks like caution in the present is often an ancient survival in the roots. The strange heaviness you feel is not because the tree is failing. It is because the tree is remembering. The tightness is memory. The pause is memory. The hesitation at the edge of your own becoming is memory. And memory can be healed, but it cannot be bullied. So do not shame the roots for being cautious. They were doing what they knew. Do not despise the branches for being still. They were protecting what was tender. Do not accuse your own life of being too late just because it began to speak only after the noise subsided. The truth is that the tree has been waiting for a different kind of weather, and that weather is already beginning. You may not see leaves yet, but you feel movement below the soil. You may not see proof yet, but you sense a loosening. You may not have language yet, but your body knows the difference between being trapped and being ready. That is why the image matters so much. The tree is not being forced into spring. The tree is waking to it. If that tree is the place where something inside you just sealed, if the image of winter giving way beneath the roots landed in a place you cannot fully explain, type the words, "I am awake," in the comments. Let the recognition stay where it arrived. I am awake. Then come back to me, because what returns now is not a performance, it is life. You do not need to invent a new self. You do not need to assemble a spiritual persona. You do not need to become impressive, untouchable, or endlessly available. You need to return to what is already true beneath the adaptation. Return to the part of you that knows when something is finished. Return to the part of you that can feel when a door is opening. Return to the part of you that doesn't need to force what is already being given. This return is not dramatic. It is steady. It is quiet. It is the kind of return that happens when a person stops negotiating with what has already become clear. You will know it by the relief that comes when you stop translating every ache as a command to try harder. You will know it by the gentleness that arrives when you stop making yourself responsible for carrying what was never yours to hold alone. You will know it by the peace that begins to replace the urgent inner argument. There are two simple ways to tend this return, and both are rooted in stewardship, not striving. The first is the morning seal. Before the day gathers speed, place your hand over your chest and speak one honest sentence. I receive what is mine, and I release what is not. Do not hurry it, do not decorate it. Let it be plain enough for your soul to trust. The second is the evening notice. Before sleep, ask yourself where you felt most expanded and where you felt most contracted. Do not punish either answer, simply observe. A tree grows stronger when it is tended, not inspected in fear. These are not tasks to earn favor. They are ways of agreeing with what is already alive in you. They are ways of making room for the root system to breathe again. And as you practice that, the old pressure begins to lose some of its voice. Not all at once, but enough that you notice, enough that your breathing changes, enough that your decisions become less reactive. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.